Good evening. Welcome to the Hard Sell, the programme where the stick in the swill bucket rattles back, and a late night hot edition of
Have a break.
Sleep is for Tortoises. "24-hour television is a fact of life now, but there was a time when the TV went to bed just like you. Well, I mean, you could stay up if you liked, but there'd be nothing on the telly. They'd have to pay overtime to at least the transmission operators. And fuck that noise. Even the radio closed down once. That started changing in the 80s. And one of the vanguards of that change was Night Network, made by LWT and running usually between about 1 and about 4 in the morning. On the weekends, obviously, initially in London and the South, but eventually spreading to most of the ITV network, before flaming out after 2 years. It was the strand that really demonstrated that small hours television could actually be halfway viable. It consisted of several small programmes, or occasionally programme-lits, mostly talk shows with the likes of Roland Rivron, or media review programmes with Barbie Wilde, and oddly a game show hosted by Nicholas Parsons. In between was some very avant-garde linkage for 1987's idea of avant-garde. Elongated grotesque fonts, random footage of 1950s B-movies for no reason at all, the occasional Dutch angle or wide-angle close-up, as many jump cuts as they could edit in live, and people being identified with smash cutaways instead of superimposed text just to confuse you. All very stylish and faintly alienating, but in a good way. It would probably get you a slap if you tried to schedule it at any other time of day, but at 2:30 in the morning, who cares? As for the advertising, well, traditionally advertising in the dead hours between midnight and Good Morning Britain is a fool's errand. With the number of truly cognizant eyes pointing at the screen likely to be countable on both hands, even if you don't count them in pairs, the airtime is all but worthless, even at the most barrel-scraping prices. Sometimes as little as a couple of £100 is still far more than the resulting broadcast is ever likely to get back. Very few companies bother at all, unless they can offset the loss. Late-night commercial breaks are both relatively scarce compared to other times of day and far shorter, often consisting of just 1 or 2 adverts over and done in the time it takes to stifle a yawn. This is especially true deep into the pit of night at 3:30 or so, when quite often no bugger will buy the advertising space at all, and the channel has to fall back on cheap as free government-funded public information films instead. But that is now. This was then. The commercials I'm about to adumbrate come from a very specific epistopic interface of the spectrum. That is to say, they come from October the 9th, 1987. Well, early on the 10th, really. Only 2 months into Night Network's existence, so it's new and interesting. Real programming, more or less, with real effort, if no real budget, out in the wilds of 1 a.m. No one quite knows how well it'll work, or even if it will at all. How many people are going to watch it live? How many people are going to tape it? How many people will bother doing either? And exactly what kind of loser, customer, is this theoretical maniac going to be? And of course, back when it was novel, a lot more people would have tuned in at this point, one way or another, than would bother even a few years later. Advertising on Night Network was a risk, but one worth taking, if only because you really couldn't predict how it was going to go. The upshot for me, you, and this programme being that I actually have some fairly meaty commercial breaks to choose from. There's still only a handful of adverts per break, mind, they weren't that reckless. So this is a compilation of several adverts that ran throughout a typical Friday night, Saturday morning on Night Network in 1987. Okay? Okay.
In July, Parliament passed the Channel Tunnel Act, and Britain and France ratified the Channel Tunnel Treaty.
Wow, here's a relic of an unknowable past. Remember the Channel Tunnel? Well, you don't need to remember it, it's still there. And the Brexit clusterfuck hasn't reached a point where people are actively campaigning to have it filled in again as yet. This time next year we'll be there, but not yet. Anyway, the Channel Tunnel. Now a fact of life, in 1987, it was a theoretical curiosity about to become real. As after decades of trying to get it off the ground, the project was finally underway. They didn't start actually digging for another year or so, but they had a decent idea of what it was going to look like.
This gave the go-ahead to Eurotunnel, the private sector group formed to build and operate the tunnel. Work has recently started on this completely new project. The tunnel is planned to open in 1993.
Only hopefully not as crap. Try not to feel patronised by the caption, it's just legal insurance against the very, very thick getting confused.
The entire venture is being funded privately.
Well, of course it is. This is Thatcher's Britain. There's no way the government's going to be involved in any way by giving them the go-ahead to proceed. The project had to be run as a private enterprise because of the invisible hand of profit making everything so much better and so forth. And that of course meant shares available to the public, which we've seen repeatedly on this programme for gas, water, electric, steel, cake, you name it. This latest one is slightly different.
Next month, as part of that funding, the public will be able to apply for shares in Eurotunnel.
You know the usual disclaimer that the value can go down as well as up? And you know what I was just saying about late night advertising being a risk? Well, multiply the latter by several orders of magnitude and then combine the two.
How will the system work?
Who's going to build it?
Who will use it?
Investing in publicly traded shares is a risky venture in the first place. The whole thing's an almighty casino, after all. That's why all those previous privatisation adverts included, in fairly large text, the value of shares can go down as well as up. Often in complete contrast to what the actual voiceover was saying at the same time. Rules of the advertising industry. While the actual content of the advertising can suggest that buying shares in South West Water is a ticket to untold wealth, they're obliged to include a cold, hard dose of reality, albeit in small writing with no attention drawn to it. Investing in Eurotunnel, whose job is to complete an unprecedented feat of engineering, diplomacy, logistics and economics, working with two governments and a completely separate company to run the railroad itself, with a deadline of 5 years within which any number of things could go disastrously wrong, was pretty much the dictionary opposite of a safe bet. Basic honesty as much as legal restrictions oblige them to point that out in rather more striking text than the usual disclaimer.
Who's going to build it?
Investing in Eurotunnel involves a significant degree of risk. We're typing this in gargantuan writing so you can't say we didn't warn you when it inevitably goes tits up. We didn't do this for British coal, for Christ's sake. Take that as a hint. This is basically a very bad idea.
Don't stay in the dark. Phone 0272 277 007.
Still, it all worked out in the end. A bit, sort of, ish. Well, it only opened a year late, and the damn tunnel's still there, and so's Eurotunnel. Although it's called GetLink now. Whatever.
We'll reserve you a prospectus and send you an information pack. Eurotunnel. Could be worth looking into.
Technology with tradition. At your gas showroom, we've brought the two together beautifully.
And here's something that's already been privatised. Gas showrooms weren't going to last terribly much longer with the whole industry thrown to the private sector wolves. But right now, it's October, it's getting cold, and the vestigial remains of your local gas provider still operates stores where you can buy fireplaces. So do that. Do that thing. What I just said.
The superb Flavel Emberglow draws together a cosy living flame, classic cast iron styling, and a £40 trade-in. The Valor Home Flame Super brings rooms to life with instant controllable warmth, heating effectively, economically, with a £40 trade-in too.
Voiceover sounds vaguely defensive of the concept. As well he might.
There's only one place to warm to these and many other fires, your British Gas showroom, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
If you suffer from indigestion, you can feel locked away in your own personal discomfort.
I often suffer from indigestion because I eat like a pig, and I have to say a clean, empty, smooth, probably quite cool room is the exact opposite of how it feels. Change it from a cell into a furnace, fill it with bubbling liquid, and set the whole thing on fire, then you've got it.
2 Rennie tablets can release you from that misery. They start working almost straight away. So in no time, you begin to feel free again.
Look at his face. That blank, resigned expression. He doesn't look like he's been set free. He looks like he's on death row and they finally come for him. He's walking out to the gallows with dignity, even though his last meal gave him indigestion. Now that's rough.
Rennie, your key to fast relief.
Ah!
If you're worried about AIDS...
Well, I bloody am now. I'm worried about it looming over me, heavily backlit.
Phone the National AIDS Helpline on 0800 567 123.
Today, of course, we're all rightly terrified all the time of a million things at once, all of which could kill us at any second, and one of which inevitably will, although we don't yet know which one. So it's hard to put in context the sheer horror of AIDS when it first emerged into the public consciousness in the mid-80s. It was everything we're scared of now, all at once, with a snappy one-syllable name to boot. The slate effect on the lettering indicates this thing as an adjunct to the Don't Die of Ignorance campaign, the British government's first real concerted attempt at dealing with the disease. Yes, in 1987. It took Reagan even longer. Well, up till now it was just killing off the gays, which for some just cemented the 80s status as a blissful right-wing utopia for the straight, rich and white. But then it started killing them as well, so, in the UK at least, they immediately drew up a stark, forbidding leaflet on the issue and mailed it to absolutely every house in the country, and hired Sami Harari and Nicholas Roeg to put together a pair of public information films, one creepy as all hell, the other quite genuinely terrifying, which ran on all 4 channels for several months and was even used on the news to illustrate stories on the subject, as if it was the official logo of AIDS or something. That all helped get cases down to the point that by the early 90s it wasn't fashionable anymore, and everyone wandered off. Phew. Still around, of course, and while it's more treatable than it ever was, it's absolutely no fun whatsoever having to take about 50 or 60 pills every single nanosecond to keep it away.
If you're worried about AIDS, phone the National AIDS Helpline on 0800 567 123.
Let's hear it for the boys at QuickFit. Those good old boys in blue.
They really do look after me. They'll do the same for you.
QuickFit, trying to legitimise their stupid campaign and its stupid song by having the public singing it to them, rather than the other way around, which is how it started off. This was how the working class were often depicted in advertising in the 80s, as cheerful little good-with-their-hands elves, singing dopey songs and only too happy to help out the poor old non-practically minded creatives of the middle class. Alright, so they included some working class customers in this one as well.
If your exhaust needs mending, then pop along today.
They'll soon sort out your worn tyres too, and have you on your way.
So next time you're in trouble and your old car lets you down,
Remember the words of this little song, you'll hear it all round town.
There's still an idealised image of the working classes for a middle class audience. Or as Smith and Jones put it,
we never swear or turn up late, we never go on strike. We're the kind of British workmen the British public like.
Obviously the advertisers got the idea from madness, but don't blame them.
You can't get better than a QuickFit fitter.
you can't get better than a quick fit
Yet dogs essentially see us as their gods. And this is the face of the death of faith.
You can't get better than a quick fit fitter.
We're the boys to trust.
More cars. And the voice of David Jason, pitched halfway between Del Boy and Duckula.
Before you check out a motor, check out Exchange and Mart. With so many cars, prices and information, you can really wise up.
Exchange and Mart's life story is like Yellow Pages in microcosm, except it both started and ended earlier, 1868 and 2009, respectively. Not that it really died at all, any more than the Yellow Pages will. It's just moved on to a new medium as an online classified section, where it thrives to this day.
Exchange and Mart. It gives you more clout.
Why would Ray Burdiss even put peel-away price stickers on his car? People will just take advantage of it. He should make it hard for a cocky sod like this guy.
Exchange and Mart. It gives you more clout.
Okay, but you do realise it's not legally binding or anything. Turning a plastic price tag upside down isn't the same thing as turning the price upside down, whatever that would even mean. The price is still 1991. Your little newspaper doesn't scare me. Finally, Scottish widows. I'll let the advert explain the backstory.
In 1815, at the height of the Napoleonic Wars, Scottish Widows Fund was founded to aid widows, sisters and other females.
Other females, generally known these days as women, but maybe they were considered a new invention in the 18th century, who knows.
Times have changed. You no longer have to be Scottish or a widow to build a better financial future, with pension, investment and saving plans designed for Scottish widows like her, Scottish widows like him, and him, and him, Scottish widows like you.
Anyway, this advert is actually 5 years old by the time of transmission and shows the venerable insurance and pensions company a little self-conscious about their increasingly old-fashioned name. The strategy was obvious: embrace that name and turn it into an advantage. And the Scottish Widow was created, essentially a thirst trap for a financial sector, first personified by Deborah Moore, daughter of Bond, in this advert directed by David Bailey.
Look carefully at the public face an investment company shows. Has it come up with pensions, life assurance and investments to fit your plans exactly? Has it provided attractive-looking returns again and again? And when the financial climate wasn't quite so good, did it still have the experience to produce a pleasing figure at the end of the day? Scottish Widows. Looking good for your money.
The odd thing is that this advert came out in 1986. The one we were just looking at, broadcast during Night Network in 1987, came out in 1982. I hope you're following this. The point is, it's a long since superseded commercial. Even the logo's out of date. And it's being shown at least 3 years after its sell-by date. That's about 10 marketing no-nos all at once. But it's also, at this point, about 1:15 in the morning, and it's an interesting idea for a compromise, putting out an outdated advert, maybe they even got a discount for it, and thereby saving the Deborah Moore one for... That really doesn't make sense, does it? Certainly no one would do this today, even for late night broadcasting. Especially for late night broadcasting.
Scottish Widows like you.
Nighttime television was never really an idea that could last. It was only reasonably successful as long as it was novel. Its cost quickly outstripped its benefits, and by now no one really bothers anymore. The BBC, in all honesty, never did. BBC One only went 24 hours at the turn of the century, and even then not really, it just switched over to the rolling BBC News channel. Meanwhile, BBC Two still basically closes down every night, except instead of going to schools and open university programmes which have moved online, or pages from CFAGs which are obsolete, they just switched to a rolling promo for themselves. Channel 4 show repeats of their primetime programming, apparently in random order, and as for ITV, well, by half midnight they've usually transformed themselves into another almighty casino, wherein a selection of attractive women invite hopeless insomniac gambling addicts to submit themselves to the breaking wheel for 2.5 hours. Followed by Jeremy Kyle, just to make sure your spirit is thoroughly crushed in time for the half-hour rolling Scala presentation that is ITV Night Screen. The post-midnight hours used to be fascinating, full of inexplicable, minuscule budget programmes, some of which could only make it to a broadcastable standard at 3 AM.
Sandwiches.
Or imports of American shows too shit for primetime in any other country. Now it's just immensely depressing fixed odds coin slots, which would probably be illegal. Followed by the Rogue Chef network. Teleshopping. Basically, at some point our society apparently decided that insomniacs deserve to be punished. As if they're not already suffering enough. Sleep is for tortoises. Lucky tortoises. Hey you lovely people, thank you for watching. Do you want to see these things a week before anyone else? Do you want access to even more video essays, random musings, and absurdist close-down based humour? Do you want to read and help shape my new book about the history of the British Broadcasting Corporation? Do you want me to continue to have food and shelter? Well, consider that one a bonus. Support me on Patreon now. Only good can come of it. I promise.